Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Are you wide awake?
Yes.
Do we need to dance again? All right. Well, good morning to each and every one of you all, and we are so excited that you all came out this morning to come and hear about what we all have to say about equality. And so we're going to jump right in, and I do want to say something. If you have a pen during our Q&A questionnaire, we want you to write those questions down so you won't forget them. I found out as I get more older, seasoned, I like to say, I forget my questions. So write your question down so during Q&A you can remember to ask them. All right? Sounds good? It's okay to smile. I promise you. All right, so our first question that we have for our panelists this morning is, what does equality mean in your life and where we live currently today? So who would like to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. Well, first of all, good morning to everyone, and thank you all for having me. Thank you, Mike and Rachel, for organizing, and thank you, Michael and Jasmine, for co-creating this moment. I believe that great men and women and gender non-conforming people are born for the times that they are needed the most. And it's no coincidence that we were born in Asheville, we relocated to Asheville, or here's a popular one, I was called to Asheville. I'm always like, who called you? And could you please tell them to stop calling people? But we landed here in Asheville, the land of the sky. I haven't heard that term in a long time, the land of the sky, for this great moment, and I think it's the greatest moment in American history. It's no coincidence at all, because we're creatives and we're builders and we're designers, and this great day, according to Reverend William Barber, is the third Reconstruction. So some people might say, well, that doesn't really constitute it as a great day. There's so many looming inequities and disaster or threat to human rights and civil liberties. But the way I see it is we've been gifted with a responsibility, and that's what makes it great. And we're here to lay new foundational truths as it pertains to what we have discovered and what we dream about equity and how it looks for the 21st century. So these new foundational truths, I think, are critically important to the generations that are on our heels, the young and the unborn. So what we have, in one hand, we have responsibility. In the other hand, we have a roadmap. And I think that we're caught up in this whirlwind of moral continuum. And in this whirlwind, we're able to track like the great victories that have been won throughout time, great victories that have led to the ratification of constitutional amendments and the passage of federal law. So as we're tracking the roadmap, we're looking at our responsibility, and we look at what's right on our tails, like the mid-century movement. So in the mid-century movement, in 5 exhilarating years, we have, and am I taking too long? So what we have the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and the Fair Housing Act of 1968, and that lays a great foundation for who we are today, and we are recipients of this great and powerful legacy, because we can't talk about equity and equality without talking about legacy. So that's kind of what equality means to me. I have a lot more written, but I really want to share space, and I think they're going to come back to me for more questions. Yeah. Okay.
We are.
Okay.
So Jasmine, same question proposed to you as well. Would you like me to restate it?
I think I got it. Thank you. I'd like to begin also just by saying good morning and a huge thank you to the folks putting this together and creating this community and the opportunity to have this conversation. It's pretty powerful to be having a conversation about equality that was spawned by a group of folks in Johannesburg.
Yeah.
That certainly feels really powerful in this moment. It's funny, I direct an organization called the Campaign for Southern Equality, and we talk about equality all the time, and we work around equality and equity issues and justice issues every single day, but there's not a lot of moments to pause and kind of go deep because things move so fast. So in thinking about this, what I kept coming back to was what my faith teaches me about equality, which is that we are all created as children of God, possessing a spark of humanity that connects us to each other and binds us to that which is eternal. And that is fundamentally equal, and that is a fundamental truth. And for me, that's what it comes down to, is it is an absolute non-negotiable truth that all people possess this spark, and all people are deserving of the ability and the freedom to be who they authentically are, and to do so safely and with dignity, not just in our private lives, but in our public lives. And I think when we look at the history you're talking about, and when we look at the moment we live in right now, a moment that's kinetic and unpredictable and charged, a moment where some in our community, our brothers, our sisters, our friends, and our neighbors are not safe in our public spaces. Young black men, transgender people, particularly transgender women of color come to mind immediately. The list could go on there. What I think about is the other side of this story, and to bring it here into Asheville, we're a vibrant city in the middle of the South, in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains, is how that fundamental truth that we are equal contests with structural and historical forces and institutional forces, and forces of orthodoxy and ideology, often which originate in religious beliefs or interpretations of scripture that teach that for one reason or another, some type of people do not possess that spark, or that spark is dim in them, and therefore that justifies the institution of laws that discriminate, laws that degrade, laws that erode that basic freedom, that basic ability. So what do I think is possible? What do I think we're called to do? I love how you opened up. Is to constantly be contending with those forces. Dr. King, of course, is famous for saying that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice, and I think what he also said so clearly was it doesn't get there on its own. And it's our work to be continuously putting our shoulder into that. And for me, where that comes from and what feeds that every day is this belief in this absolute truth, that we are all created equally, and that spark is there within each of us.
Good responses, thank you. Definitely good responses. So our next question that we have for you this morning, could you each share the degree to which the element of creativity, and I know you've written a book and you've created Date My City, of which the element of creativity can be integrated in your vision, definitions, hopes for ensuring that equality is equitable in equitable ways?
I think as a creative, it's often that we feel more comfortable living in our head, and we feel more comfortable in our workspace, in our workshops, but desperate times call for us to really connect to the things that make us very uncomfortable, and sometimes the things that make us very angry. And we're told to resist anger. But I believe that through anger and disappointment, that's where the most creative ideas are birthed. So when I first returned to Asheville, I was angry on a lot of different levels. But the main level, I saw an OG in Asheville. And nobody recognized her as an OG. Like, she's really wreaking havoc. And I call that OG gentrification. And when I really recognized how beautiful she was on the outward appearance, but how she was destroying the very fabric of equitable and equality type of environments because she squelches connectivity. And I believe the definition of connectivity is to the currency of vulnerability. So when we have these spaces that we feel very comfortable in, and we want to just reside with people that look like us, that create the exact way, that are on top of knowledge, have the burgeoning ideas, then we don't really lean into those uncomfortable situations where creativity can really be birthed and it can be cohesive. So I created Date My City out of anger because I saw gentrification taking over my community. And it's right on the heels of urban renewal, which was right on the heels of redlining. So I saw like this pattern, and no one was really speaking to it. And people who were speaking to it, their voices were silenced because they didn't dress a certain way. They may have sagging jeans, or they may not have the education, so they don't have the articulation of a lot of people. So I created Date My City because I was angry, and it sounds very sexy, but it was birthed out of anger, because what I wanted to say was outside of touring Asheville. We do that very briefly. We do it every day. We do it recreationally. I wanted somebody to date my city, look deep, court what was uncomfortable, and look into the lives of Black people who live in this city, poor people that live in this city, and a long-term date where you actually look at their lives and know that their culture is beautiful because we're all beautiful because we're made in the image and likeness of the Creator. So I use this creative idea to bring people together. I see culture as a magnet. It brings people together. But as I was going through, just really making sure that my purpose and my mission really fit the relevance of the time and where Asheville was, I also saw that Asheville is very wounded and needs a lot of healing. So the idea of bringing Blacks together in social spaces and being able to diversify Asheville was kind of put on the shelf just a little bit, because sometimes I don't really feel like we're ready for true diversity in Asheville, because we have a hard time sharing space and sharing ideas and really practicing what it means to be a sister, a brother, or a peoplehood. So we need a lot of healing. So I'm using culture right now and spaces for Date My City to really go through that deep healing, because there's a lot of trauma that has occurred throughout generations.
Thank you. Jasmine? Yeah, it's a great question. I think especially in this moment we're in, and there's two things that come to mind for me about the role that creativity plays in helping to combat inequality and create equality. And the first of them has to do with empathy, and believing that, I'm a writer, I write fiction. That's the kind of creativity I do. And that really the heartbeat of that is about being able to empathize with and enter into the life of a fictional character, but the life of someone that you don't know. And from the writer's side of that, it is an act of imagination, but also an act of empathy to try to truly craft a multidimensional character who a reader can meet and experience as if they were meeting a real person. And I think art, not just written, but visual arts as well, film, all of these possess the ability to engage the moral imagination of an audience and to ask them to see the world and perhaps even feel part of the world in a way they might not otherwise. And I think that this is a moment in which I think we need to be doubling down on empathy. As scary as that can seem, as vulnerable as that makes us, I don't think we have another option except to say we are going to find a way to connect with each other. We are going to find a way to heal and to be in reconciliation with another. And I think what can happen in the arts, which sometimes we experience collectively, oftentimes we experience in this sort of very personal, private way, where these interior parts of us can be engaged, and the spirit can be opened in a way. So that's one piece of it. The other, which is much more sort of public and public-facing in a way, is about creativity in the arts as an act of resistance, which I think is a really critical thing for us to be thinking about right now, as we look at the political moment that we're in, understanding that I think the arts will be part of our salvation as a country right now. The arts will be part of our resistance. What the arts allow us to do in public spaces is sort of torque or queer the the reality that we're presented with, the packaged reality that we're sort of the status quo we're asked to accept and not challenge, and allow us to create spaces where we can be having different kinds of conversations about equality, where we can be enlarging our understanding of the American experience and the global experience that we're in. So those are the two threads, the sort of engaging the moral imagination and inviting people into an empathic experience, especially with those who feel or seem like the other, and then arts as a basis of and as a core part of the resistance that we need to all, or I would invite all of us to be part of as we move forward right now.
Yeah.
Great. So before we go into our Q&A, I hope you guys have your questions ready. We want to ask our panelists one more question. What would you like people to leave with today? What is the main key point that you want them to take with them?
So I would really like to make a powerful statement right now to make everybody kind of like chill and stuff. You know? That's the plan, but I think I want to. but I really think when we talk about equality, I think about the father of civil rights, and that's Martin Luther King. And in his fourth and final book before assassination, he penned, entitled this book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? And that's what I want to leave with us today. Like, where do we go from here? Asheville, where do we go from here? Like, I wrote once that we are history makers. And we have to take that question really to heart. We can, as a city, we can go down in the book of shame, you know, for really being hyperly attentive to visitors and to development, or we can disfigure inequality and inequities in our city by really leaning into the upward mobility of our elderly, you know, of our the others, any identity that is considered other, our school-age kids. So where do we go from here? Community or chaos? And I think the creatives, I think we can determine that.
I will try to build on that. For me, one of the things that's most compelling about this moment is that there's an extraordinary opportunity in our hometowns and in our local communities to create change. And that, I think, is especially true in Asheville and in Buncombe County. And I'm sort of shifting into wonky political policy mode here, but that feels pretty... The reality right now is that 1 in 4 kids in Buncombe County lives in poverty. You can't be equal if you're growing up in poverty. You are fundamentally equal, that's a truth, but will you have access to every opportunity? No. African Americans in our community experience disparity from preconception to death. That's true. LGBTQ folks experience discrimination at the state level, most recently in the form of HB 142. This litany could go on and on because of the political moment we're in. And while it's certainly critical to engage on the federal and state levels, it's also incredible to run the ball as far as we can and play offense on the local level. Asheville crafts itself, Buncombe County crafts itself, and I believe there's truth in this, as a brave Southern community, a different kind of Southern community. And I think there is a lot of truth in that, and I also think we need to live fully into the promise of those words. And this is a moment for us to come together and lean in and be brave as a community and be willing to take risks. Sometimes being willing to take risks means there's going to be backlash. When you live with a target on your back, you get acclimated to backlash, and sometimes it makes you braver. This is a moment for us to be brave, to summon that strength. This is a moment for our artists to be unleashed. This is a moment for our policymakers to be bold. This is a moment, I think, for us to find a way to sit at the table with people who may have voted differently than us, but who do care about the fact that 1 in 4 kids in our community are living in poverty. So that's how all of this swirls for me, and that's one invitation I put on the table right now, is there's no need for stasis here, there's no need for paralysis, there's a tremendous amount we can do locally, and I think we have a community that's ready to do it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.